The latest major NFL contract extension has greatly impacted what the Bengals are going through right now, and in this video, I'll explain how one of their most common problems has cost them once again. Hi again, Bengals fans. John Sheeran of A to Z Sports Cincinnati here, and for as much criticism as I've had about how the Bengals have managed both T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, I don't have that same level of criticism for how they've managed Trey Hendrickson. Truthfully, I think everything that they've done since signing him originally to a 4-year deal back in 2021 has been pretty spot on. They extended him for a year in 2023. They didn't give in to his trade demands after he wanted to be extended again after just 1 year. That was more of his beef with his old agent anyways, so I think everything that the Bengals have done with him up to this point has been pretty spot on. The problem, however, that the Bengals commonly run into, no matter how well that they've managed business with a certain player, is that the longer that they wait to pay them, the worse it ends up being for them. And in the beginning of March, even before free agency even begins, this wasn't seen as a really big problem for Trey Hendrickson, considering that he does have 1 year left on his contract. The Bengals have the entire offseason to theoretically get something done with him. And these talks are already well underway. Trey's camp reportedly met with the Bengals back in February after Trey made it very clear that if he doesn't get paid by the Bengals, that he would like to be traded away from the team. Like, as far as negotiating a major contract with one of their own players, the Bengals don't normally do this stuff until the summer, so doing so in February and March, they're already way ahead of their normal schedule. But again, if you wait just a little bit longer compared to when other teams actually start making these decisions and putting pen to paper, it's going to cost you. And this is why I think the Las Vegas Raiders extending Maxx Crosby to a 3-year, $106.5 million extension, it's not the greatest news for the Bengals. Before this deal even became public, it was reported by the 33rd team's Ari Mirov that Trey was asking for $32 to $33 million from the Bengals, and that both sides weren't necessarily there yet. But after another pass rusher who was very safely in the same tier as Trey Hendrickson signs on for a new deal worth $36.5 million a year, you have to wonder if Trey's asking price has changed a little bit. And there's reason to believe that it won't, right? Like, Crosby was not the only edge rusher, aside from Hendrickson, looking to get paid this offseason. You're talking about TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons, 3 guys who I think have a good argument of getting more than Hendrickson regardless. These players and agents have a much better idea of how much they're going to get paid and what their market is like, way more than us on the outside do. So it's very possible that $32 to $33 million a year was already a projected price for just being right below whatever the new market level for pass rushers was going to be. But at the end of the day, a lot of that is still speculation. We don't know very much what's going on. The fact that it's a question at all if whether or not the Bengals' negotiations with Hendrickson just took a left turn because of Maxx Crosby's deal, that's enough of a question to make us talk about it, to discuss whether or not it matters and if it's going to negatively impact these negotiations. Because before Crosby's deal was announced, I think there was a lot of Bengals fans who would have not liked the idea of paying Trey Hendrickson a new contract worth $32 to $33 million a year. But now, it doesn't look so bad in comparison, right? And if the Bengals had signed him to a deal with that number last week, it would have already looked like a bargain after Crosby got his deal. And this is the reality of every single big-time contract in the history of the NFL. The only one who can't say the same is Deshaun Watson, because the structure of an 100% guaranteed contract for a 5-year deal that's worth $230 million, that's probably never going to be replicated. But in terms of average annual value and how those numbers skyrocket every single year because of the natural yearly inflation of the cap, that's always going to be a constant. And it's something that continues to bite the Bengals in the butt because they can't get ahead of these deals because they don't offer the cash flow and guarantees that other teams like the Philadelphia Eagles offer. And all of this isn't to say that the Bengals are no longer focused on extending Trey Hendrickson because the price got too big or Hendrickson is moving on to someplace else. This is just to say that the landscape may have changed now because they just took a little bit too longer compared to their competitors per usual. And if things do end up going south in this partnership weeks down the road, we can look back to this exact moment as to where it all began.